Afternoon again. When we thought of who could deliver this year's luncheon keynote, we thought it was important to go local. My background, as some of you know, includes running a local redevelopment authority, so I know the importance of mayoral leadership when it comes to advancing housing and homeownership. We also wanted someone familiar with NCST's work and someone who has spent their career working to advance housing and homeownership. Mayor Cherelle Parker of Philadelphia over-indexed in all of those categories, and we are honored that she can join us today as our keynote speaker. Cherelle Parker is the 100th mayor of the city of Philadelphia. She is a graduate of Philadelphia Public Schools and attended Lincoln University, where she graduated and became a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. She then earned her master's degree from the University of Pennsylvania, and she began her career teaching public school students, including English as a second language students for immigrant families in the city of Philadelphia. An internship in the office of Philadelphia Councilwoman Marian Tasco inspired Mayor Parker to a career in public service. She served as a senior staffer there and went on to serve in the Philadelphia House of Representatives. There are so many points in Mayor Parker's bio that are important for us housers here, but her commitment to housing is not something that just began in the mayor's office. As a state representative, she championed housing and homeownership. She led a home repair loan program. She then moved to the city of Philadelphia, where she served as a council person and was the leader of the Philly First Home program to help promote home ownership for first-time home buyers. She also has created a home appraisal bias task force and a residential assessment task force as a council person. So again, housing is not something new to Mayor Parker. She is true to this, as we say, and we're excited to have that expertise here with us today. She was elected the 100th mayor of Philadelphia and its first female mayor in 2023. A mom, a teacher, a strong and experienced leader, Mayor Parker works to create a safer, cleaner, and greener Philadelphia with access to economic opportunity for all. She spends her time outside the office, at home in Northwest Philly, with her son Langston and their dog Max. Without any further ado, please help me welcome Mayor Cherelle Parker to the stage.
Got you up. Hello, 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 everyone. It is an honor and a privilege to be here on this morning. When I came in the door, I said I felt like I was at home because I was with the home ownership heads this morning. That's who we are. So it's an honor to be here today with so many people who have spent their careers advocating for and building, restoring, and creating housing options for Americans just across our nation. Chris was correct. I'm Cherelle Parker. I'm the 100th mayor of Philadelphia. I am the first woman in 341 years. I am. However, if you leave here today and the only thing you remember about me are those two things, I've done something wrong. In addition to that, I like to say when I'm back home that I didn't run to be a footnote in somebody's history book. I am interested, and the reason why I have a seat at the table now is because it is incumbent upon people like me who come from where I come from. And it's funny, I've been quoting Grandma, don't you dare tell her. She's listening, I know. I thought she was all wrong when I was growing up, but I've been quoting her more and more and more often. We should all be doing the best we can with what we have, where we are. And so to be here with each of you today, the Urban Institute, I want to thank you all for hosting, all of the attendees, and for the people who are listening virtually. I'm going to do my best to try not to put you to sleep, so whatever you do, don't log off. Special shout out to a couple of people who are in the audience. Annette is here from Philadelphia who worked with me. You know, you learn about who people are. Two quick notes. I want you to remember this. It's important to know what people say about you at the table when you're not there. Who defends you. And you really do get to know who people are when you're in the foxhole, when all of the resources that you need in order to get something done, and or when you are running up against persistent opposition, if you're at war with the status quo where you work. That's how you find out what people are made of. And Annette is here. She worked with me on the home appraisal bias task force. I want to thank you so very much. And no pressure at all, but when you hear me talk about my commitment in the city of Philadelphia right now, I know that I won't do that alone. And I'm happy that Jesse Lawrence is here, our Director of Planning and Development. Please give Jesse a huge round of applause. Because all of what I'm about to talk about is his responsibility. Next, Chris Tyson and the entire NCST team. And I'll just say it one time, this National Community Stabilization Trust. You all mean a great deal to me. And for the people who are here for the first time, who I'm meeting for the first time, I want to let you know that this is a very authentic connection that I have with this organization. Soror Ajwa, who is present, just raise your hand. Ajwa, you know what authenticity means. And so I've been working with NCST specifically around their work in stepping up to the plate. And this was very important to me, to become the home of the National Middle Neighborhoods Initiatives a few years ago. We were howling in the wind. And people were like, what are those things you're talking about called middle neighborhoods? Now people across the nation are appropriately defining what this middle neighborhood constituency is. I know many members of the Middle Neighborhood Steering Committee are here today. My team has told me that you all are in the audience, so I want to thank you for your ongoing dedication to this effort. And I also want to tell you that home ownership is extremely personal to me, and it has been throughout my lived life experience along with my career. Just a little level set, I am the mayor now. However, I served as a state representative for 10 years in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. I was the chair of the Philadelphia delegation when I was there, when we had a Republican governor, a Republican-controlled House, and a Republican-controlled Democrat. And at that time, I was the youngest Black woman who had ever been elected to the Pennsylvania House. And I want you to know that some of my best work, I hope you just put a pin in that. Democratic woman from Philadelphia, chair of a delegation where the opposite party, Republicans, are in control of every branch of government and the executive. And that's when I end up being the chair. Check my luck out, right? But it's interesting that is when some of my best work would have gotten accomplished. In addition to that, I served as a council person for 7 years. But my greatest work that really brings me here on today is because my grandmother was a domestic worker. Some of you in the room are too young to know what a domestic worker is. I read somebody's resume recently, and they're now called environmental technicians. But when my grandmother did it, it just meant that she cleaned the homes of wealthy families in order to take care of me. And my grandfather was a Navy veteran. And because he was a Navy veteran, when he comes from Accomack County, Virginia, she comes from Manning, small town in South Carolina. Hi, Leslie. And they get to Philadelphia. They meet and marry and live in a place called Richard Allen Homes, which is built when it's initially created, it's built as a housing development for returning veterans. If you were to say Richard Allen in Philadelphia now, people would refer to it, if it as it once was, it was referred to as the projects. It was public housing. When I am born in 1972, so in 71, when my mother is pregnant, she's a single teenage mother. My grandparents assumed the responsibility of raising me, and this part of the story is the story that gives you the passion. It gives the most meaning to your work, which is why I'm sharing it. When my grandmother and grandfather assumed the responsibility of caring for me, that is when they left Richard Allen Homes and moved to Northwest Philadelphia. Now, the way they say it in my family is, Aunt Dorothy and Uncle Jamie Lee moved on uptown like the Jeffersons, right? Listen, it wasn't a big house. It was a single brick, stone, row house on the 1900 block of Penfield Street. Cheltenham Avenue is the divider. One side is the city of Philadelphia, other side is Montgomery County. To this day, still remains to have a high rate of home ownership, one of the most civically engaged constituencies in the city of Philadelphia. But right now, they're at risk. And the pressure and the pain points, they are very, very obvious. That the uptown, that's what we call where I moved to, Northwest Philadelphia, she moved uptown. So that portion of West Oak Lane, and I still live in that community, only about 5 minutes away from the house that I grew up in. That's how much I love that community. It is now going through a great deal of stress. So you would understand why, when I was a state legislator and a council person, that this issue of home ownership was extremely important to me, because I experienced it. And it is because my personal life, my lived life experience, and my professional experience, that I believe that home ownership is one of the essential keys to this thing that we talked about called the American dream. But if we pay close attention to what just happened here in our nation, no matter where you are, I don't care what side of the aisle you are on, if we listen to the people in our nation, they want, in a very tangible way, to see, touch, and feel democracy and government working in their very lives. And Chris, thank you for affirming my commitment and how I've committed to deliver. That's by making Philadelphia the safest, cleanest, greenest big city in the nation, with access to economic opportunity for all. And for that constituency that lives in middle neighborhoods, you know who they are. They make a little too much, about a nickel over the income eligibility guidelines, to benefit from any government program, but their credit rating and score is not, and their life experience and their income doesn't put them in a position to walk into a mainstream prime institution and get approved for the home renovation loan that they need. That is where my passion comes from. There is something different about owning your own bricks. My grandmother, the domestic worker, had a certain amount of pride. And when I talk about good bricks, I don't want anybody to think I'm against new construction. I'm for it. I support it. I want as much of it as I can possibly have. But there is something that is just regal about those old brick and stone properties in our respective cities, where now I want to do everything I possibly can to gut them all out. But the bones is so good. The architecture is so good. The idea of somebody just demolishing those and not seeing, if you just gave us some modern carpentry work, some electrical work, some HVAC work, we could be back in business and have more than one bathroom on the second floor, which is what the house was like that I grew up in, right? You can give me a powder room now if you redesign it on the first level, do the basement over the way we eventually got to. I share all of that with you so that you could not just remember the why, but that you can feel. Maya Angelou, people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they will never, ever forget how you made them feel. I'm here today, and I'm excited because you all are the technical experts who are going to help us, particularly in this season, ensure that housing and home ownership is the issue, not one of the issues. It should be the foremost, most important issue that we are addressing here in our nation. Why? Because it's where folks build generational wealth, but it also helps to ensure that we are putting people on a path to self-sufficiency. Why is this important? So many people across the nation, when they think about the city of Philadelphia, Jesse and Ajua and Annette, they think about Center City. And they think about our gleaming skyscrapers and the most beautiful city hall in the whole wide world is in Philadelphia. They think about our tourist attractions. We get a lot of people come in to visit the Liberty Bell because you know we are proudly the birthplace of democracy. But the city of Philadelphia is geographically extremely large. And in essence, we are a city of neighborhoods. And I believe that those neighborhoods are stronger and more vibrant because of their homeowners. And like every other city across the nation, Philadelphia has seen, and this is where the pain points come in. We've seen a slow and steady decline in home ownership rates over the past few decades. And now, we're going to change it though. So I won't ever run from the data. Right now, we're basically half and half. And if you would probably do some research right now, it would probably be that renters tip the scale. That's how much work we have to do in the city of Philadelphia. That's why I want to share with you some of the programs in Philadelphia that support some new and existing homeowners. And I know we're going to talk about the programs in more detail when we get into the Q&A, but I'm an elected official. And when elected officials get together, I like to, and even the people who are in this room, I like to affirm that we are not expert articulators of problems. That's not who we are supposed to be, but we are the architects of solutions. So people are looking for us to, one, as a mayor, work with the City Council of Philadelphia via a budget to make sure that budget is reflected. That commitment that you hear me talk about as it relates to home ownership, because if you have any mayor or any other elected at any position tell you that they care about home ownership, I want you to say, now let me see the line items in the budget, because if you don't see the dollars reflected in that moral document, it is what affirms a commitment to this issue that we all care about. So for me, first issue is property tax relief. You all know that effective home ownership policy, it doesn't stop at the home's purchase, right? So we have to strengthen a homeowner's capacity to stay in their homes. Think about my grandmother, 71, they move in, 72, I'm born, but think about those in her generation that are still hanging on. Now, that's a challenge that we are seeing. How many of them in their golden years have the ability to actually remain in their houses? So property taxes in the city of Philadelphia, while they are relatively low compared to many other jurisdictions, we have a set of what we refer to as our property tax relief programs to support homeowners who, quite frankly, we get to this point because we saw several Philadelphians lose their homes because they couldn't afford to pay their taxes. Picture that one, right? So this bucket I'm about to describe for you, it is born out of that effort. First, we have probably one of the most generous homestead exemptions in the nation. We gave Philadelphia, the city of Philadelphia proper, it's the only city of the first class in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We gave it the enabling authority during my tenure in Harrisburg when I chaired that Philadelphia delegation to create a homestead exemption. And now that dollar amount is $100,000. So we start with the $100,000 homestead exemption. Then a freeze on property taxes for seniors. Another tool we developed during my tenure in Harrisburg, our LOOP program, long-term owner occupants program. And it's designed to put a cap on the potential tax increases in appreciating and gentrifying neighborhoods. So let me give you an example. You've been in your house for 10 years. You may qualify under LOOP. Your property cannot be increased, your property taxes, the assessment, by more than 50% from the previous year or more than 75% over the past 5 years. And then what LOOP does, it locks in that assessment and freezes it so that it can no longer increase. When we saw that, I want to reference it as it's an offspring, because it's an offspring of so many other things. When I think about gentrification, it's an offspring of so many other underlying causes that we had not addressed for many years. But when we came up with the LOOP program, it was to control for that. At the same time, we make it easier for folks to pay their taxes by offering installment plans and owner-occupied payment agreement programs. They're like UPA. Now, some people, when I was chaired a delegation, this particular set of new laws or enabling authority that we gave to the city from Harrisburg, one of them was the ability to codify making payment arrangements. And some people were like, why would you do that? I mean, I can enter into a payment agreement if I want to now, but when you are talking about home ownership and housing policy, you want to do everything that you can to codify this into law, so it doesn't matter who the next mayor is who comes into office, no one will be able to say that they don't have this tool readily available to offer. That is what would usually happen in the city of Philadelphia. In addition to that, recently, we just approved through the City Council of Philadelphia, and I want to affirm this as well. If any of you are close to any mayors, you've got to make sure you say to your mayors, you got to work in partnership with your city councils, and you've got to work to come along on big issues like this. If not, we won't be able to achieve success. And that is when we entered into another program, which is called our property tax freeze for low-income homeowners, because no homeowner in the city of Philadelphia should, again, and I saw a head nod over here, lose their home because they cannot afford to pay their taxes. Second part, extremely important to me, because you heard me talk about those good bones of those brick and stone houses. Housing preservation. Housing preservation. Please don't get so fancy that you forget about those good old bones, and you don't make housing preservation a part of your strategy. It is our focus. It is my belief that the most affordable home is the home you already live in. And our goal should be, how do we help to keep you and give you access to the tools that you need to stay in that property? Why? Because preservation programs reduce homelessness and they keep neighborhoods stable. So what is your bucket of programs that you use in the city of Philadelphia to promote preservation? BSRP, which is probably one of our most infamous, and quite frankly, it is extremely successful. It's our Basic Systems Home Repair Program. This is where you income eligible, you can get free emergency repairs for fixing a roof, doing something with electrical work or some kind of carpentry that you need, major home systems, and you can get free repairs there. Then we have the Adaptive Modification Program. This is free adaptions to give people with disabilities, extremely important, easier access to mobility within a home. So you think about an existing home that you lived in, somebody did not know that they would become disabled. They became disabled later on in their life, and we go in to give them the tools to help them move around and through. You'll be surprised how essential that is to helping to keep families together in the midst of a crisis. Tangled titles. This is challenging in the city of Philadelphia. And again, access to economic opportunity for all, putting people on a path to self-sufficiency. If you describe this to somebody and well, I just don't understand. If he's lived in a home, if she's lived in a home all of her life, why would her name, if she's been paying the bills, why would her name not be on the deed? Well, it is a generational home. Her grandmother lived there, her mother lived there, and she lived there, and nobody in the world would deny that that is not her home. But unfortunately, the family didn't have an accountant or a lawyer on retainer, so they did not do the appropriate estate planning that would ensure that that asset would legally be transferred and that the person currently living there has an actual deed in their name. Why does that become important? Because this menu of options that I'm describing, if you aren't on the deed, guess what? You can't get access to any of the programs, even if you're eligible for them. So we in the city of Philadelphia provide free legal assistance for homeowners to help them resolve that challenge. We also have affordable rental housing preservation. This is the rehab of occupied subsidized rental units. That becomes extremely important for people who are already in rental properties, and they need to be rehabbed. And we have to make sure that we don't forget about that bucket, because people don't talk about that part a whole lot. My baby, for those of you who know me, is called RRR. Restore, Repair, Renew. I did not create this program as mayor. I told you my work and my footprint here has been since I've worked in government. And Restore, Repair, Renew, it helps homeowners access low interest loans to invest in their existing properties. Now, I created this program when I was in the City Council of Philadelphia, when I was just interested or introduced to this concept of middle neighborhoods. Because prior to me working with you all and us coming together to define sort of the qualifying factors of what deemed this middle neighborhoods concept across the nation, we didn't know. We didn't know what it was. It's almost like predatory lending when we defined what it was in the city of Philadelphia when the housing market went boom. Ira Goldstein is not here from the TRF, wherever you are. I know you're probably watching somewhere. I love you, Ira. And every bit of this work that I've ever done, I've never done anything consumer protection housing without Ira Goldstein and the reinvestment fund by my side. But these residents were the residents who made too much. Again, a nickel over the income eligibility guidelines for any government-funded home repair program. And most of them did not get approved for the loan. I'm going to come back to that in a second, because I've got to walk through that underwriting criteria, and I'm proud of it because I designed it. Then I want to get to the mortgage tax foreclosure diversion programs. Extremely important. Provides free housing counseling and legal aid to help residents facing the loss of their homes due to mortgage and tax foreclosure. And for me, this becomes extremely important because, Chris, when you introduced me, I thank you. I heard my mentor's name. I refer to her as my boss lady. She is the lady who trained me. Her name was Councilwoman Marion Tasco, and she was the leader in working with the National National League of Cities, and so many others who passed the first city-oriented legislation, anti-predatory lending legislation that defined predatory lending for the nation. Our mortgage foreclosure diversion program, it came out of that effort. So all of us are sort of building on past work that's been done in our respective regions. Another entity that's extremely important, HEDA Hotline. No matter what we've been seeing with climate, we still have lots of people who need help when we go into a cold blue. And so free emergency repairs to those heaters, they become extremely important. UESF, that's our funding to support assistance for low-income individuals and families who need help paying their utility bills across the board. And via LIHTC, this is something that's become important as well. And I've got to say this on the record, because if you talk to people about me, half of it is true. And that's something that I said, half of it is true. I will always prioritize home ownership. Home ownership was what put my grandmother and grandfather on a path to self-sufficiency and to give me the expectation that it was a culture I was supposed to own. However, I do not deny that there is an increase in renters across the nation. So we have a program, it's called the Shallow Rent Program. Low Income Housing Tax Credit, we call it LIHTC in the city, is long-term rental subsidies that help recipients achieve housing stability and avoid homelessness. Where we need it, how we need it, I want to use it. But let me say this to you. I am not satisfied with people who rent because that's their only option. That's where my blood starts boiling. So if you hear someone in the city of Philadelphia or around and they say, well, she only talks about that home ownership. She really doesn't care too much about those who rent. The only people I want renting is my soror, Francis Jones, who says, I don't care what you say about home ownership. I'm not raking up leaves and shoveling snow for anybody. Guess what? I'm fine with that because that's her choice. It's not because the very foundation of America's promise is not readily available to her. So if that's your choice, that's your choice. Next, first-time home buyers. This is when Philadelphia has really succeeded. We've established some successful programs that promote first-time home ownership, income-qualified middle individuals and families, housing counseling. We cannot function without our housing counseling agencies. The staff of elected officials can't do it. For those of you who work at our housing counseling agencies, thank you so much. You are our subject matter experts. And we send our people and we rely on you in order to get work done. But we have one of the most robust networks of housing counseling agencies in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in the nation, quite frankly, and I'm really proud of them. Next, another one of our babies, I'm thinking of my council member, Mark Squilla, Philly First Home. Once we realized that certain people who, think about this, and you've seen this, they can't qualify because they don't have the disposable income needed to put the down payment down for the house, but they actually work a job. I talked to a veterinarian the other day who have been working so hard to pay back these student loans. They make about $130,000, $140,000 a year fresh out of school, but they just don't have the disposable income for the closing costs and down payment assistance. That's where we developed Philly First Home, and I'm excited about that. That's down payment and closing cost assistance. You can get up to $10,000, and we're super excited about that. And the next is Turn the Key. Remember Turn the Key. Turn the Key is, and our former council president, Darrell Clark, this is one of his babies. I was a strong supporter as the majority leader of the city council. Our current council president, Councilmember Kenyatta Johnson, we took a very tough vote. We voted for a construction tax, very small one, but a construction tax, because we knew we needed a pot of money that could help those who were right in the middle. How are you a city worker and you can't, working for the city, getting retirement benefits and health care and what should be a living wage, but you can't afford to buy a house in your city. That's where Turn the Key comes from. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that very shortly, but let me go to how we're going to get it done. And this is where you all come in. When you hear me talk about, excuse me, safe, clean, and green, and economic opportunity for all, the city of Philadelphia and any other municipality in the nation and or county, we have limited revenue generating capacity. We don't have the ability to fund all of this alone. That's why we have to have, and I talked about this on the campaign trail, and people were like, well, what in the world does that mean? Well, it means that we rely on our federal, state, and local government partners, along with the private sector and the philanthropic community, and you bring every stakeholder to the table, for example, and say, the challenge here is the need to create housing because we have a supply challenge in the nation. So what do we, not the city of Philadelphia proper, but all of us. Audrey, you're here. I hate keep picking on you. Our former Secretary of HUD, Marsha Fudge, she's on speed dial, right? Because they know every nook and cranny in the department. And, before you try to accomplish something, you got to know what to ask for, right? And where the buckets are. That's why that intergovernmental cooperation and planning becomes so important, because that's how we're going to put innovative programs like Turn the Key. We're going to put it on steroids. Let me tell you quickly how it works, because somebody's watching at home, not in this room, you all get it, but somebody's at home saying, well, how does this program she's talking about work? One, we keep construction costs down by assembling parcels of publicly owned vacant land for the homes to be built on. So we use publicly owned land. Then we reduce the cost to the home buyer with mortgage assistance and down payment assistance that can total up to $85,000. So in essence, we're helping to buy down the cost of the mortgage. Then what do? Told you private sector's engaged. You partner with preferred lenders who provide the additional financial assistance. And then, oh gosh, Jesse, so I've got to just quickly say it, okay? Don't get mad. Whenever you're working with a developer who is working on affordable housing, I start to think about my grandmother. Just because someone is working class or in the low to moderate income community and or earning range, that does not mean that they don't like quality, nice, aesthetically appealing things. And sometimes when people think of this concept that's called affordable usually means subpar construction and or design. And so we partner with these developers. Look, and MBEs and WBEs, that's important in every step and range possible. We have to make sure that we're mindful about the people who are benefiting from doing this business, and we should incentivize the use of MBEs and WBEs whenever we possibly can. But we work with those developers who understand, and when you get a chance for me, Google Turn the Key and in Philadelphia, and they have a good friend Mo Rushdie, they have virtual tours to show you what some of those properties look like. These developers agree to use high quality fixtures and finishes. I call it affordable luxury. So if you ever see me online or you hear me somewhere and she's talking about affordable luxury, you know exactly what it is that I'm talking about. We mentioned the municipal workers. Turn the Key, we started it when I was in council. We did a very minor increase to the realty transfer tax. We got $60 million to support that BSRP program that you heard me reference, because we had a huge backlog. And always remember that there will be a backlog whenever anything is granted. But we did 60 for BSRP, and we did 40 million for the program Restore, Repair, Renew. We've already sold over 100 homes to new homeowners, and it took some time. Here I'm thinking of Mitch over the Bloomberg Harvard cohort for new mayors, and Mitch from Harvard would say, you have to be very impatient with old programs that deliver mediocre results. very impatient, but you should be very patient with new programs that have the potential to sort of push back on the status quo and achieve the kind of results that you want, but you may not immediately get the success that you want. You have to be very patient there, and we're going to get it done. Cherelle Parker, what have you promised to the city of Philadelphia very specifically as it relates to housing? I'm glad you asked. When I was on the trail, I said to the people of Philadelphia, and I had people who were working with me, these experts in politics. They were like, well, whatever you do, just talk about the concept. Don't marry yourself to a number, because then you're going to overpromise and underdeliver. No. When you're committed, you get the best subject matter experts around you, a whole lot of people who are a whole lot smarter than me, to look at the amount of building permits that the city of Philadelphia was issuing on an annual basis. How many requests for funding, for new construction funding, were coming from lenders in our area? What was happening with PHA? Kelvin Jeremiah, we love you. We have the best public housing director in the nation. We added all of that up and we said, you know what? If we do it right, if we use our intergovernmental approach and we maximize the efficient use of these scarce resources, we will be able to create 30,000 units of housing in 4 years in the city of Philadelphia that will consist of the building of new and the preservation of existing. And it will be mixed use. Some of it will be public. Some of it will be market rate. Some of it will be affordable. Some of it will be what we call workforce housing. But we will make sure that we commit to 30,000 units. That's all on Jesse's shoulders. So give him a hug before he leaves. So we've committed to that. My ask of you, and I want you to please promise me something, even if your logic or your thinking on this is different from mine. I ask you to just explore my perspective. When we are doing all of this and developing these kind of programs, I've always considered myself to be a champion or a fighter. How did I describe it in Harrisburg? I would say I'm working to close the gap between the haves and the have-nots. That was my sweet spot. That was what I felt like my purpose was. But when I get to council in particular, because, in local government, that's where you can really, get things done, right? I say, you know what we've been doing? Those of us elected to public office, who've been jumping up and down, talking about, you have to be twice the federal, your income has to be twice the federal poverty line, and everything is low income that we do. A revelation came to me. I said, you know what we've done? We've pit the have-nots against those who have just a little bit. And we have those two constituencies scrambling and fighting over what had been crumbs. And I said, there is no dignity in that. I won't do that. So whenever you want to have a conversation with me about AMI, this is where I will differ. Maybe from even some people in this room who feel like we should be making an investment in some of our lowest income and lowest earning communities. And we should always make sure that we're doing everything that we possibly can to support those Americans, Philadelphians, Pennsylvanians who need our help the most. But don't we dare engage in what I reference as poverty exclusion by developing income eligibility guidelines that lock out the most significant and consistent contributors to a tax base. That's the neighborhood I grew up in. Now, we are not the highest contributors to the tax base, but guess what we are? We're the most consistent. When I was in council, I asked for a piece of data during the budget hearings, and they were looking at me like, why the hell does she want this? I said, GIS for me. Don't tell me then. You know what we do. Disaggregate the data. Show me my district and show me the amount of payment arrangements that are made in my district. it wasn't the highest grossing. They didn't contribute the highest amount of property taxes to the city's property tax pot. But guess what we were number one in? We were the number one district who engaged in agreements, payment agreements in the city of Philadelphia. What does that tell you about the people who lived in the district that I represented? One, their most valued asset was their house. They would do everything that they possibly could, do what they could with what they had to make sure that they paid their property taxes, and they just needed a little help from government in order to make it happen. I'm going to get to the rest when we sit down and have our conversation, but I want to leave you with this. That program that I told you that I created when I was in council, a lot of people fought back against me because they thought, remember, it was a $100 million pot. We had just increased, I think, 0.01%. $100 million was the issuance. Remember, $60 million went to BSRP, $40 million. I have fought hard. And thankfully, my council president and other colleagues said, no, we're right to do this. We would create, restore, repair, renew. I want to give you this underwriting criteria. You can borrow up to $50,000. You have 10 years to pay it back. It's a 3% fixed interest rate. You can have a credit score as low as 580. I don't care how much the feds cut rates. Where are you going to get income eligibility guidelines that can compete with those underwriting requirements? Why was this important? Because, and this is ultimately, talk about patience, where we want to go. We didn't get to the data, and we'll talk about it, because I want to talk about the number of people and who's getting denied home repair loans. Like, all of those dynamics are still going on. But if we would help these people who were getting denied access to the ability to have revenue to fix up and rehab, think about tax foreclosures. Think about properties that are vacant and abandoned in your land bank. Ours, Jesse's rehabbing it and working with Angel and others who are there, an amazing team. I just don't think Jesse, over the years, they had the help that they needed, but we're working on making sure that they have that right now. If you give people access to the resources that they need to improve what they had, if you want to reduce violence in the city, if you want to improve the quality of life in a challenging neighborhood, put people on a path to self-sufficiency. They have the property. Then give them access to an opportunity to earn a living wage that will give them health care and a retirement security, so they're not dependent on government to do a damn thing except for pay their taxes. I will show you a neighborhood that is safe, clean, and green, where people have a certain dignity and pride. My grandmother, head up, shoulders back. I don't care about what's going on in your life. You will create a community that is self-sufficient. I hope I haven't put you all to sleep. Thank you so very much for your patience. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chris. Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you. I ought to make sure I get these data points out here. Let me get these
Mayor,
notes out.
that one more time for Mayor Parker.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, we said we were having a meeting of housers. And so we invited a keynote speaker who, as I said in the opening, is not new to housing, is true to housing.
Oh, wow, thank you.
And we appreciate you so much. Your passion for this, the depth of your intelligence, your technical command of this issue across all of the expansiveness of housing is so impressive, and it's impressive to see in a mayor. So thank you for being here. As you said, we'll remember how you made us feel. And as the fellow grandson of a domestic, and as someone who is a nerd about home building and home renovation and restoring these beautiful buildings with the brick and the stone and all of that, you had me on the edge of my seat. But of course, Mayor Parker, as the head of NCST and the work that we do in middle neighborhoods, which you champion. We're so very thankful for that. Talk to us about why middle neighborhoods are so important today in the midst of the current housing crisis.
Just my opinion. I'm not referencing anyone specifically. And remember, I've been elected over the years. So this is to Cherelle Parker of the Young as well. When we have enacted public policy at the local, state, and federal level, we have engaged or created war between those two constituencies. And when we hear people who yell from the rooftop, I'm supporting the low income, Philadelphians, well, wait a minute. Chris, just stay with me. So you want to make this investment here, but you are telling me that a family of four, a husband and a wife, each making $65,000, $70,000 a year with two children. I have a 12-year-old. That ain't, I'm an English teacher, I mean to say this for emphasis, that ain't a whole lot of money, right? So you mean to tell me that group that's struggling, and we're struggling to recruit them in the city, if it's a teacher or a police officer or a firefighter, we want them to live in and stay in the city, but you are telling me they should not get any help. Well, when you tell us we need to infuse all of our, it's like all or none, right? I'm saying it's not either or, it's and but, and it's addition, not subtraction. You're telling me that this is the only point of entry for access to economic opportunity. So this is what you're incentivizing. Do you ever expect the folk who enter here to move on up? Or are you accustomed to supporting a constituency to be able to say that you're saving someone, but my expectation for you, Chris, is that you stay right where your point of entry is. That's where we battle, and that's a value-based proponent. Some people would say no, I just don't see it that way, and everybody has a right to their opinion. But for me, that point of entry and those who are in the middle, we have to make sure that we just make room. And we don't, because everywhere you look, and I don't care what the race, class, socioeconomic status, zip code, religion, sexual orientation, identity, I don't care about any of that. Wherever you go, the people who are in the middle, those are the people who are getting squeezed. Okay? And we act like they should be, we shouldn't think about them. Why? Because if you don't make sure that they have the ability to stay, even if they are a nickel over that line, what's happening in my neighborhood is they're falling now. And so you're either going to pay on the front end or you're going to pay on the back end, because if they lose the house, if they lose one paycheck, if something happens and now they are in the other bucket, now that's your responsibility as well. So I just think it's worth taxpayer dollars. And it's worth the investment.
Yes, indeed. Mayor, you talk about the spectrum of housing issues, and you touched on something I was so happy to hear you touch on, because it's something important to the work we're increasingly doing at NCST, and that is the problem of tangled titles in heirs' property. We know specifically how that challenges wealth building in families across the board, particularly in Black and Latino families. You've added that to your very detailed and rigorous awareness of housing issues. Talk to us about what cities need to do around heirs property and tangled title.
So first and foremost, my hope would be that folks take a page out of Philadelphia's book and remember part of the reason of why we get here is because those families don't have an accountant and or a lawyer on retainer. And so what do they need more than anything? It takes time to locate and research all of the documents that you need. You need a lawyer. And if I can't find the lawyer because I can't afford a lawyer, so helping with that legal assistance. And for us, I'm thinking about VIP. I think about community legal services. They do amazing work. I'm looking for, and I thought I had them with me. I wanted to give you some stats from some research that had been done by Pew. Here it is. A recent study from Pew stated that over 10,000 Philadelphians face tangled title issues. Listen, that represents over $1.1 billion in generational wealth at risk, located primarily in communities of color. And for those of you who are just saying, well, what about outside of Philly? They said nationwide, there are hundreds of thousands of tangled titles. Listen, and this is what I would try to do when I was in Harrisburg, because I represented Philadelphia. I tried to draw correlations between urban Pennsylvania and rural Pennsylvania so they could see we might be in a different geographical environment, but our challenges are basically the same. Yep. Nationwide, there are hundreds of thousands of tangled titles in rural as well as urban communities with an estimated value of more than $32 billion. So when you hear me talk about right now, I think we're at a point in time in our nation, Chris, we should be doing everything that we can to find commonalities, things that where we both suffer the same. And so what are some common solutions that we can proffer that urban, rural, and suburban America or Pennsylvania, everybody can get behind those things because we all are being impacted in one way or another. I mean, that's how I'm probably weird, but that's how my mind thinks. How do I find synergy with people who I agree to disagree with? That's what I'm working on right now.
Absolutely, Mayor. I want to stay on what I believe may be the same Pew study on Philadelphia. A recently released Pew study, maybe the same one, found that private investors buy 1/3 of all single-family homes in Philadelphia. I know we understand that we need private investment in the housing space. It's always been a component, but increasingly around the country, investors are edging out would-be first-time home buyers, would-be starter home purchasers. We're seeing interest at this at the federal level, the state level. How do mayors impact this?
So one, thank you all for being leaders, because this wasn't getting a whole lot of attention until you all started talking about it. 1/3, and so you all, for me, you heard me mention predatory lending. To me, this is another form. Like, it's not dead. This is another form of predatory lending. So the Stop Predatory Investment Act, it was introduced in Congress. NCST supported that effort and other national housing advocates. But the question becomes, are there any approaches? And that's what we're trying to figure out now, right? Any approaches included in that bill, because I don't want any of us leaving here in defeatist mode. We went through an election and people made some choices, and some of us may not like those choices, right? We had hoped for different outcomes. For those of you who did, it is what it is, but the time is now to figure out how you can do what you can, where you can, with what you have. And so let's take this legislation and say, okay, they introduced it in Congress. Now let me get Jesse and all of the other housing experts together and figure out what can we adapt that we can implement here at the city level, and what can we give to our state partners. Joanna McClinton, our first African-American, first woman and African-American woman Speaker of the House in Pennsylvania. Jordan Harris, who's from Philadelphia. He's our majority chair of the appropriations, and my good friend, family, Vincent Hughes over in the Senate. Is there anything Philadelphia can give to its state legislative leaders to say, hey, this is what was moving in Congress. We don't know what's happening down there now. So can you do anything at the state? And can we do something here at the city? And can we work together? Intergovernmental cooperation and planning, it is not a very popular thing to say, but if it's not happening. Now, is it true sometimes that you'll have barriers? You know, as a mayor, I didn't think about it when I was in the state house. You know, state governing authorities, legislative branches, they have preemption power over a lot of our work. And I didn't have a problem with it, before. But now I'm the mayor. You think about work that you can do, and then what about when the state says, well, you don't have the authority. You can't make any legislation associated with banking. Banking policy comes from the Pennsylvania General Assembly, but that's why you've got to have that intergovernmental cooperation in order to get things done.
Absolutely. Mayor, I imagine as you work towards 30,000 new units of housing in the city of Philadelphia, that you're going to need a cadre of developers, particularly those from the communities that you most want to impact, ready and capable to do that work with the resources, with the lending tools, and the support to revitalize these beautiful brick homes with the stone and the powder room and all of that. We could talk about that the whole time. But so how do we help support those emerging developers on the ground in Philadelphia to support your goal of 30,000 new properties?
I'm a firm believer that if you talk about democracy or living, people do want government or anything that they are supposed to benefit from. They want to see it, touch it, and feel it in their own lives. So in my mind, whenever you hear me saying disaggregate the data, as representing districts throughout my career, sometimes people are really great with giving you the overall data points. But when you say, well, disaggregate the data, these zip codes, and, do my district specifically, you really get to see who's doing what. In this case, when it comes to developing, instead of saying, let's disaggregate the data, I say debundle. That's my key. Well, the larger developers, they can go and let's say if I need 200 or 300 units, and we're talking about 1, 2, 3 bedroom apartments, for families, there may be a smaller developer who doesn't have the ability to play with that large footprint, but he or she may have the ability to do 1 to 2 duplexes at a time. If you're intentional while you're developing, the rules, the regulations, the processes, the systems that will govern how the program will work, you can design it in such a way that I make room for you, Chris, to come in. I know that there are large market rate developers who are going to build, high income housing, and I want those, and we want those in the city of Philadelphia too. I know those who do extremely well with the workforce housing, maybe the mid-size, but we also know that when we're talking about ownership, it's just not individual ownership of the housing. Let's talk about the real estate market overall and who's getting access to the opportunity to build for these very communities where this housing is needed. They too should have access to the opportunity to become owners. So if I can only do 1, 2, or 3, maybe I start with 1, 2, or 3, and you don't set me up to fail.
Absolutely.
When you're designing, right? If you make the rules, you talk about how much money you should have in order to do it, timeline, who are the stakeholders are going to help you get it done. I am pro union, proud pro union, pro worker, but even with that, that's an opportunity for workforce development, apprenticeships, diversity and inclusion within the building trades, working with Ryan Boyer, Bill Sprawl at the Carpenters. I'm thinking about Wayne and just my entire building trades family in Philadelphia. We do this together, and we also help to build the next generation of skilled workers, while supporting our union men and women in the city. So I want to say this to you. You all remember John Lewis would talk about good trouble. He would say good trouble. When I came into office, you know what the rate of violence was like in the city of Philadelphia. You heard about our moniker being the poorest big city in the nation. Some of friends I would talk to, they would say, are you crazy? Why would you want to be the mayor of Philadelphia with everything that's happening in the city? Because I don't look at those problems or challenges alone as sort of the end. You look at a challenge like the supply challenge with housing in the city of Philadelphia, and you say, well, wow, this is good trouble, because this is workforce development. This is creating new owners. We're creating new entrepreneurs. Like, all of the things that we can get done. So where you stand on the issue depends on where you sit.
Yeah.
The lens through which you see the world is based on what you're exposed to. And because my real life lived experience has required me to, one, understand what the problem is, but not be an expert You ever hear me say, he's an expert AOP, or she's an expert AOP? That's articulator of problems. Those of us who are in this room and the work that you do, you are the architects of solutions. That's what people are yearning for. And that's why I was so geeked up to come and hang out with y'all this morning.
Mayor, for our final question.
Yes.
Our friend and the first special advisor for racial equity for HUD, Dr. Ajwa, who's sitting here in the front row, told me, she said, look, if you're going to interview Mayor Parker, you've got to understand she's so committed to housing that she had Secretary Fudge swear her in to her mayorship.
I did. I know y'all gonna say she's really geeky, right?
You clearly, with a decision like that, and with someone, again, with such a deep and rigorous understanding of housing, wanted to send a message. What is the message that we have at the end of Mayor Parker's term in office? What legacy are you leaving, not just for Philadelphia, because this is much bigger than just Philadelphia, for the nation?
Chris has turned this into a therapy session. No, you're forcing me. You're forcing me. I am old-fashioned certified secondary high school English teacher. I like to remind you, I'm a high school English teacher who happens to be the mayor. James Baldwin, one of the most prolific humanitarian activist, author, was doing an interview in the middle of the civil rights movement. And the person who he's in a conversation with says, well, James, mainstream America cares about civil rights too. And for those of you who know James Baldwin, he had his legs crossed, and he says, well, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. I've never promised that, and I'm happy because I campaigned as myself. I wasn't a chameleon and changed with white people or changing with black people or changed with Latino people or the immigrant community or Democrats or Republicans. I was the same person everywhere I went. And I said, I want to unify our city behind safe, clean, green economic opportunity for all. So I want to unify us around an agenda. I didn't go anywhere in the city where people didn't say, you know what? We may agree to disagree on some things, but I'm with you on that. Those should be goals for our city. So for me, because I didn't promise perfection, I promised to do the best I could with what I had, and that I would do it in a way that you could see and touch and feel city government at work in your life. And you won't say, you know, well, I heard what you said. Right. I said, don't simply listen to what I say. You watch what I do. We cleaned 18,000 blocks over the summer. Gun violence in the city of Philadelphia has reduced by 40%. Very tangibles. We started CCME, City College for Municipal Employment. A lot of vacancies in local government. Again, think the good trouble. Okay, vacancies in city government. We need to prepare a new generation of municipal workers. Why aren't they coming directly out of our school district of Philadelphia for those who don't want to go to college? Why aren't we preparing them to take the civil service exam and or find a way to get around it? So during my senior year, let's say I start in January and finish in June, how amazing would it be for me to walk out as a senior and right into municipal employment with the city of Philadelphia that would give me the ability to own a wage so that I could own a house? earn a wage so I could own a house. So all of this is connected to me. So in every extended day, extended year, education for young people in the city. At first, I referred to it as year round. Oh, they went crazy. So we're very specific about it now. Extended day, extended year, free before and after care programs, and not just babysitting. You know, right? You know, life sciences and biotech, STEM, programs that, you know, in some schools they get naturally, or families who are wealthier, they can afford to pay for them. We're providing that in the school district of Philadelphia, and we're just getting started. So I want people to think about what I've said, but if they can't point to it and see it and touch it and feel it and say, it won't be perfect, but they'll be able to say, she used her power and her leverage and seat at the table to change our lives in a tangible way. Thank you all.
Please. We've heard from not just a mayor of a major American city. We've heard from an intellectual. We've heard from a doer. We've heard from a practitioner. And we've heard from a true houser. Mayor,
can I
thank
use
you so
that?
much.
Houser?
Yes.
I'm a houser. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Appreciate it.